Hi everyone, it's Kino here. Thanks for tuning in to Living the Yogi's Life, where I share with you how to translate the lessons that you learn on your yoga mat into your everyday life. Yoga is a personal practice. It's something that's not just about the physical postures, but it's a little bit like a window into your deepest and most truest self. No matter how many thoughts you think or how much you get caught in the endless stream of inner commentary, nor how many emotions distract you, whether they're positive or negative emotions, whether you're feeling intensity of pleasure or intensity of pain. No matter how intense the physical sensations may be in your body or in the material or physical world, there's always a true self underneath, something that's changeless, something that's eternal. And the whole practice of yoga is actually a methodical approach to giving you a direct experience of that true self, that changeless part of you that's lying underneath all of the multitude of thoughts and multitude of emotions and multitude of sensory experiences. Without the experience of the true self, there is always this tendency to identify with thoughts and emotions. So for example, before I started practicing yoga, when I would feel an intense emotion, whether it was anger or jealousy or rage, or even something positive like joy or happiness, I had the tendency to really identify with that. Like there was no space between me and my emotions, So, I mean, maybe you've experienced something like this. When you're angry, it's like the anger kind of takes over your whole body. It almost sits inside of you like a rage. You kind of feel like a caged animal and you just want to jump out of your own skin. Well, before I did yoga, when that experience, and I definitely have felt anger and rage before in my life, So when I have experienced that, it would take me over and I felt like I couldn't do anything about it because there was no space between the emotion and my identification with the emotion. But through the practice of yoga, you begin to get a window into yourself underneath the vicissitudes of your emotions, the arising and passing of various emotions. Now, one thing that I've learned through the vehicle of the practice is that no emotion, whether positive or negative, lasts forever unless you keep feeding it. So if you have anger or if you have pleasure, if you get attached to it or you get aversion towards it and you fight against it or feed it and try to get more of it, then that emotion and all of the negativities that are associated with it will tend to kind of sit inside of you. So the practice is perhaps a retraining of the habit pattern of the mind more than it is just about putting your leg behind the head. While some of you are leaving comments saying that you prefer my videos with my leg behind the head, the only reason I'm trying to put the leg behind the head in the first place is to figure out who you are in the journey of that particular posture. So that each posture represents a journey deeper down into the true self underneath. In the comments from last week's videos, thanks for leaving a comment. Be sure to keep doing that. Let me know what you want to hear me talk about. And I will read all the comments that are on these videos so you know I'm listening to your thoughts. Now, one of the comments last week was to include some of the more traditional yoga philosophy, and particularly in the 8 limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga method. This is Ashtanga literally means 8 limbs. This is the style of yoga that I practice and teach. One of the key points within the moral commitment to live the yoga lifestyle is called satya. Satya is the Sanskrit word for truth. And one of the most humbling aspects of the practice is this moment when your truth, your experience of truth begins to shift. So as I was speaking previously about anger, when we think about anger or rage, we somehow assign truth to our feelings or to the source of our feelings. So think about the last time you were, really angry at someone or you just kind of woke up kind of raging at the world. One of the things that really can get me going is when I'm working towards something, whether it's in my life or in my practice, and I can sometimes get really frustrated that it's not happening fast enough or not happening on my own time frame. So I have to pause and sort of sit with that a little bit and breathe and release and surrender. So in the practice of yoga, how does satya come into that? Well, the truth of the moment is perhaps relative. Especially when it's an emotional truth. We can argue about the subjective experience of reality for infinity, for an infinite amount, because it's the definition of subjective truth, emotional truth. However, the yoga practice, when we are at our deepest level, seeks to connect you into a deeper and more fundamental truth, the truth of the inner being, that changeless, permanent truth underneath the subjective truth of our emotions or the subjective truth of our thoughts. all of the world of the thoughts is necessarily restricted because it exists within a human logic, and human logic has a necessary fallibility inside of it, which means it's essentially flawed or limited on some level. The truth of the inner being is divine in nature, so it is in some ways perfect, and so is larger than any human logic and contains the essence of the perfection of the world. And this is somehow what we're after in yoga, the satya, the truth of the inner being. In the journey down into this true self, there are endless obstacles that we'll face. Each one of the emotions that we're attached to, each one of the emotions that we're identified with, whether positive or negative, each one of the thoughts that keeps us away from that experience of the true self, these we must face on the inner journey of yoga. And this is why the practice itself presents so many challenges and why you have to be brave when you delve into that inner journey. It's not a journey that really can be done like a hobby. In fact, this is sort of a radical retraining of the whole habit pattern of the mind to be acclimated towards the inner self, towards the true self within, towards the satya of the inner being, towards the truth of your deepest and most fundamental nature. And this is the reason why the yoga practice has the power to transform you, because at your deepest level, you are infinite. At your deepest level, you are already perfect and whole. But so much of our life is spent identifying with all of the world of our thoughts and the world of our emotions, the world of our sensations, that somewhere along the way, we've lost the truth of the inner being. Through the practice of yoga, you can find that again. I hope you're inspired to do your practice every day. Namaste.